She was just 23 years old, a nursing student and mother of two, loading groceries into her Ford Bronco in Lake City, Florida. She never saw them coming, two escaped prisoners on the run after a daring breakout. Within minutes, Carmen Gayheart was kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered in cold blood. The men responsible were Anthony Floyd Wainwright and Richard Hamilton. Both were captured, convicted, and sentenced to death. But their fates would be very different. Hamilton died in prison in 2023. Wainwright fought for his life through decades of appeals. On June 10, 2025, after more than 30 years on death row, his fight ended. Florida executed him by lethal injection. This is the story of the escape, the manhunt, the trial, and the long road to justice for Carmen Gayheart. Anthony Floyd Wainwright was born in 1970. By the time he was 24, his life was already defined by crime. Burglary, break-ins, petty theft, parole violations. He grew up in North Carolina, often in trouble with the law, with little stability at home. Court filings later revealed his lawyers argued about mental health issues and even raised questions of neurological damage linked to his father's exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. Whether or not those claims held weight, one thing was certain: Wainwright had spent most of his short life behind bars. His record showed a long history of trouble, minor offenses, and brushes with the law. At the time of the crime, Wainwright was already behind bars, serving 10 years for burglary in North Carolina. Richard Hamilton was 7 years older, born in 1963. His early years were marked by chaos, family dysfunction, poverty, and trauma followed him everywhere. As a child, he was shot in the eye with a BB gun, leaving him partially blind. By adulthood, Hamilton had chosen crime as his path: armed robbery, violence, and a long sentence of 25 years in a North Carolina prison. These two men met behind prison walls. And in April 1994, they made a choice that would forever change not only their lives, but the lives of everyone who crossed their path. The setting was the Carteret Correctional Center in Newport, North Carolina, a minimum security prison intended for inmates considered low risk. But the system underestimated just how dangerous Wainwright and Hamilton were together. On April 25, 1994, they escaped. They stole a Cadillac. Then they broke into a home where they grabbed rifles and supplies. Within hours, they were armed fugitives on the run. But instead of lying low, they drove south, toward Florida, toward violence. By April 27th, they arrived in Lake City. That's where they spotted Carmen Gayheart. Carmen was young, full of life, and focused on her future. She was a nursing student, just 1 semester away from graduating. Friends described her as hardworking, kind, and determined to make a better life for her children. Her husband and family adored her. That day, she had no way of knowing her path would cross with two desperate men. At gunpoint, Hamilton and Wainwright forced her into her Bronco. They ditched the Cadillac at a lumber yard. Carmen was now their hostage. They didn't just want a vehicle. They wanted control. Driving north, they pulled off near State Route 6 in Hamilton County, a remote, wooded area where no one could hear her screams. What happened next was brutal. Carmen was sexually assaulted, strangled, and finally shot twice in the back of the head with a bolt-action rifle. She was only 23. Her body was left in the woods. And then they fled. That evening, when Carmen didn't pick up her children from daycare, Alarm bells rang. Her husband knew instantly that something was wrong. Her father called the police. Friends and classmates joined in the search. But hours turned into days. And Carmen didn't come home. On April 28, 1994, just one day after Carmen's murder, Wainwright and Hamilton were spotted in Mississippi, driving her Bronco. Trooper John Wayne Leggett attempted a traffic stop. But instead of pulling over, the fugitives opened fire. A gun battle exploded on the roadside. Bullets shattered glass. Engines roared. Trooper Leggett returned fire. In the chaos, both fugitives were shot, Hamilton in the face, Wainwright in the body. But both survived. Leggett would later be honored as Trooper of the Year and receive the Medal of Valor for his courage that day. With the fugitives in custody, investigators turned their focus back to Florida. Under interrogation, Hamilton broke first. He confessed to the abduction. He confessed to the assault. And he confessed to what they had done in the woods. To prove it, he drew a map. Crude, incomplete, but enough. On May 2, 1994, deputies Mel Black and Albert Jones followed that map into a dense wooded area of Hamilton County. At first, it was only a foul odor that guided them. Then, as the sun rose, they found her. The remains of Carmen Gayheart. At the District 4 Medical Examiner's office in Jacksonville, Dr. Margarita Aruza performed the autopsy. She confirmed what Hamilton had already described. Carmen had been raped, strangled, and shot. Some of her teeth were missing. So was the hyoid bone, often fractured in strangulation cases. Deputies returned to the crime scene and recovered the missing evidence. And then came the DNA. In the back seat of Carmen's Bronco, forensic analysts discovered semen. The DNA matched Anthony Wainwright. The odds of it belonging to someone else were, in the court's words, astronomical. The evidence was undeniable. In July 1994, a grand jury indicted both men on charges of first-degree murder, sexual battery, kidnapping, and robbery with a firearm. State Attorney Jerry Blair announced his intention to seek the death penalty. Carmen's family agreed. Nothing less would be justice. The trial couldn't be held in Hamilton County. Too much publicity, too many emotions. So the venue was moved to Clay County. Even there, precautions were extreme. Intelligence revealed that Wainwright and Hamilton had been plotting another escape. The plan? Kill a correctional officer and break out. Authorities weren't taking chances. Both men were fitted with hidden stun belts during court appearances. Security was tight. In May 1995, both trials began. Separate juries. Same charges. Same evidence. Prosecutors laid out the story. The escape, the abduction, the assault, the murder. They presented DNA, forensic evidence, and Hamilton's own confession. The juries deliberated. On May 30, 1995, both came back with guilty verdicts. 2 days later, they recommended death. Wainwright's jury was unanimous. Hamilton's vote was 10-2. On June 12, 1995, Judge Vernon Douglas made it official. Both men would die in Florida by lethal injection. But executions in Florida rarely happen quickly. For the next 3 decades, appeals filled the courts. Hamilton filed appeal after appeal, 1997, 2004, 2017, and 2018. Each was denied. He remained on death row until January 13, 2023, when he died of natural causes at the age of 59. The Department of Corrections never released the cause of death. Wainwright fought even longer. His lawyers argued he had been denied a fair trial. They claimed his defense failed to present mitigating evidence, his history of trauma, mental illness, and intellectual disabilities. They argued about jury instructions, unreliable witnesses, and even his father's exposure to chemicals in Vietnam. But one by one, the court struck down his appeals. In 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court dismissed his final petition. On May 9, 2025, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed Wainwright's death warrant. His execution date was set for June 10. His attorneys filed a final, last-minute appeal asking for an evidentiary hearing, arguing about attorney access. But Judge Melissa Olin rejected it on May 16. And on the day of the execution, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to intervene. The path was clear. June 10, 2025. Wainwright declined a special last meal. His fiancée and spiritual advisor visited him that morning. Shortly before 6 p.m., witnesses were escorted into the death chamber viewing room at Florida State Prison in Rayford. Wainwright appeared calm. He made a final statement, but behind the glass, it was garbled and hard to understand. Later, his advisor released a written note thanking supporters and condemning the death penalty. At 6:22 p.m., the drugs flowed through his veins. Anthony Floyd Wainwright was pronounced dead. In the viewing chamber sat Maria David, Carmen's sister. She wore a T-shirt with the words, "Justice for Carmen Gayheart." For 3 decades, Maria and her family had waited. They had lost their father in 2013. They had lost their mother to cancer in 2022. Neither lived to see justice carried out. Maria spoke afterward, "I feel lighter. We can finally close the book on this legal chapter." The story of Carmen Gayheart is one of heartbreak and injustice, but also of persistence. 2 escaped convicts believed they could take her life and escape the consequences. One died on death row. The other was executed 3 decades later. But the family never gave up. For 30 years, they carried Carmen's memory, demanding justice. And in June 2025, they finally saw the sentence carried out. Thank you for watching this case. For more true crime stories from across the country, cases of justice delayed, but never denied, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.